All right, well, welcome everyone to today's support session. And so for those of you that haven't been here before, welcome. So what we do here is we spend about 15, 20 minutes going over a learning lesson for the week. And today's lesson is going to be anxious attachment. And we're going to talk about it in terms of a dance. I love talking about attachment styles as dances. So I often attribute the anxious attachment style to the Salsa of Uncertainty. We'll get more into it in a second. But what we'll do is we'll spend about 20 minutes where I'll teach. There is a journal prompt in the chat that is all yours. It should be fillable. It is a fillable PDF, so you can take notes while we go along here. You can also use it later on for your own reflection. And so a lot of people will use it and they'll answer it afterwards. They spend some time after the session. Sometimes they just incorporate it into their journaling. So you can just take the questions and use it. And we'll also sometimes take some of those questions and use them for our Q&A at the end. But if at the end of the learning lesson you have any questions about it, that is the perfect time to raise your hand. If you would like some hot seat coaching tonight, so you have a situation at home and you want some help with that, go ahead and hit hot seat in the chat for me at any time. And we'll go ahead and spend 5 or 10 minutes going through something of what you're dealing with. I'll ask you some questions back and forth and we'll get you some help. So that's no problem. And any other questions you have about previous support sessions or workshops or anything in the future, always available for those as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Have you ever felt that love comes with strings attached? Like you're always trying to prove that you're enough, but it still doesn't feel quite right. Like something's always missing and you're not imagining it, and you're definitely not alone. Anxious attachment can feel like a dance that you did not choose. You're always chasing connection and worrying that it might slip away. But today we're going to talk about why that happens, how it shows up in your life, and most importantly, how can you change it? Because this isn't about blaming your past or your parents or, fixing everything overnight or blaming yourself. It's about understanding where these patterns come from and starting to move in a new direction, one step at a time. So let's get into it. And I can't wait to share these 3 steps with you that I hope they create a love that feels steady and secure. So before we jump into the details, let's go ahead and open up the chat. And I want us all to pause for a moment. I want to hear from all of you. Go ahead and write in the chat, what is that one thing that you struggle most with in relationships? So I gave you some ideas, but feel free to put anything you want. Maybe it's overthinking every interaction, wondering if what you said was the wrong thing. Did you push him away? Did he not text you back that day because you sent him too many texts the day before? Maybe it's feeling like you're constantly needing reassurance to know that you're loved. Or maybe you struggle with boundaries. So you're worried that they'll pull away if you stand up for yourself. Lynette says, short answers from hubby. And yes, wondering if what I said was wrong. Yeah. So you say something to him. He gives you a short response and you're like, oh my God, did I say the wrong thing? Did I piss him off? Is that why he's short with me? Did I mess everything up? Is he going to be this way for a whole week? How is this going to happen? I see you're laughing, Lynette. I know, right? Oh, asking for more quality time. Yes, Tammy. You asked for that and you're like, hey, can I just get this thing from you? Can I have another date night? Can we just spend some time together? And then maybe he blows up, or maybe he's like, God, you ask from me so much stuff all the time. And then it's like, oh, no, hold on. That's not what I meant. Right. But when we get those responses back that weren't really meeting the expectations inside of us, it elicits that anxious attachment inside of us. So Kiki says, not taking responsibility for someone else's actions, behaviors, and problems. Yeah. So that's like someone else does something, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that must have been on me. It's amazing what anxious attachment does. It really just makes us feel like we are responsible for all this stuff going on around us. Spouse bringing up the past up to 40 years ago. Yeah. And then if he's bringing it up, and because then you said something, we're constantly thinking like, oh shit, did we do something wrong there? Like, what's going on? And that is what I want us to be thinking about as we're moving forward. Because here's the thing. Whatever it is you're feeling, you're not the only one. Look at all of these different types of ways that this shows up. And this is a safe space to get real about the challenges that we're facing. And I promise, just naming what's hard, honestly, it can be the first step towards something better. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into what we want to uncover, which is the salsa of uncertainty. So I want you to imagine a salsa dance. It's vivid, it's fast paced, it's full of passion, right? It's one of my favorite dances of all time. You just see them just curled up around each other and they're moving in sync and it's beautiful. But in this dance, in the salsa of uncertainty, one partner is constantly checking the other's face for approval. They're afraid that if they make even one misstep, they're worried the entire dance might mess up because of them. And that is the anxious attachment. That's what it feels like. It's intense. It's all consuming. And when it's flowing beautifully and everything's in sync, it feels like it's the greatest feeling in the entire world. But one misstep happens and you think it's your fault. And instead of moving along with the dance, everything blows up. And that's exhausting. And that's why we're here today. Because first, I want to talk about how our earliest childhood experiences, they set the rhythm in this motion. So they teach us how to earn love and they teach us to fear losing it. And then next, we're going to explore how these patterns are showing up in our relationships today. So whether it's overthinking or seeking constant reassurance or struggling to set boundaries or all these other things that you were bringing up in the chat, that's how it's showing up in our life and our relationships today. And finally, we'll break down the steps to change the steps. We'll rewrite this dance into one that feels steady, secure, and joyful. This isn't about blaming the past or being perfect. It's about understanding where these patterns come from and then taking the first steps towards a healthier, more confident rhythm. So let's figure out how to shift this dance together. Let's talk about where the salsa of uncertainty even begins. Like, why did we get here, right? How our earliest experiences taught us to move in this anxious rhythm. So for many of us, love didn't feel unconditional. It felt earned. Maybe you were told that you were loved, but only when you performed really well. So when you got a really good grade, or when you stayed really quiet, or when you made things easier for the people around you. Or maybe love came with fear. So the fear that someone important to you might leave if you act out. So I had a client, I'm going to call her Claire. And so Claire grew up in a house where love was often tied to achievement where she was growing up. So when she got good grades or she won an award, she'd hear from her parents, "Oh my God, we're so proud of you. We love you. You're amazing. This is great." But when she made a mistake, like she got a B, or she forgot to turn in her homework, or she forgot to clean her room, when she didn't meet her parents' expectations, all of a sudden, it was like she was invisible. She was a disappointment. She was a burden. She was a waste of space, right? This is how all of the words she was using to feel when she was younger. And that feeling of having to earn love shaped how Claire showed up in her relationships as an adult. So when her partner didn't text back right away, her mind started racing. Like we were talking about, did I say something wrong? Does he still care about me? What did I do to mess up? And she'd replay these conversations over and over again, analyzing every word, overextending herself to keep the connection going. So maybe you can see yourself in Claire's story, where these early experiences, they become the foundation of how we connect with others. Because as you can see, if the only time Claire was getting loved and praised and affection and hugged was when she was perfect, what do you think that's going to teach her? That she has to be perfect in all the other areas of her life in order to be loved and cherished and cuddled and wanted. And that's what happens. It teaches us to overgive. It teaches us to overthink and to overcompensate to hold on to love. But the good news, I do have good news, I swear, it's not all bleak. Just because this is how the dance started doesn't mean that it's how it has to end. So that's why we're going to keep exploring how to step out of this old rhythm and find one that feels steady and secure. So what does this look like? We've been talking about this a little bit so far. And also welcome. I just saw a new person pop up. Hello and welcome, P. Here is the journal prompt for the evening if you want to kind of follow along. We're talking about anxious attachment tonight. So what we're going to look at right now is, what does it look like in your life today? Like, what is it? How is it showing up? What does this mean? Like, what's the big deal? Well, That's the thing. Are the behaviors and the thought patterns that keep us stuck in the salsa of uncertainty are all stemming from these events in childhood. So for Claire, her relationship felt like a constant push and pull. So she would overanalyze every little thing that her partner would do or say. And then if like they didn't respond to a text right away, she'd immediately think, oh, he's upset with me. I did something wrong. Now he's not going to write me back in time. It starts spiraling. It becomes worse and worse and worse the longer the relationship goes. And Claire also found herself needing constant reassurance. So she would ask questions like, "Hey, are we good?" That question always in text. Are we good? Like, what is that? And it would frustrate him. And he'd be like, oh my God, I told you already we're good. And she would keep pushing him and he would keep pulling away. She would text him, hey, are we okay? Did I do something to upset you? And then in person, she would ask him, like, hey, do you still love me? Like all of these questions, they come out and they start kind of snowballing together like this. But even when her partner reassured her, it never felt like enough because she didn't trust him. She didn't trust when he would say, yeah, babes, we're good. Like, chill. Like, that he probably could have reassured her in a better way. Don't get me wrong, but he's also not perfect. And all of these ways, she just kept pushing it away. But the other way that this shows up in our lives is boundaries. See, boundaries were really, really tough for her. I know for a lot of my clients, even the idea of setting a boundary immediately starts making their entire body cringe. So if it does for you, you're not alone. But she worried that saying no or asking for something that maybe she needed would push him away. She would overextend herself and she would always put his needs first, thinking that, hey, if I just put his needs first, if I just do everything that it is that he needs, then everything's going to be okay. Do you see what's happening though? She's doing that thing again. She's trying to be perfect. She's trying to figure out and read his mind and do everything perfectly so that way she can earn the love that she doesn't think she deserves. Because then what happens with anxious attachment is in order to get love, we don't think that we deserve it unless we earn it. And that's what I just want to blow up to all of your faces right now and tell you, no, just no, no, no. We all deserve love. And we'll get you there. We'll get you to a place of really understanding that you all deserve this. So by the end of the day, we're going to explore how you can start shifting these behaviors and rewriting your dance, just like Claire did. Also, welcome to Lori. Hi, welcome. We're talking about an anxious attachment tonight. So we are on to now how to heal it. So you came in at the perfect time. But the salsa of uncertainty doesn't have to be your forever dance. Healing anxious attachment starts with simple but powerful truth. Okay, ready? You can become the caregiver you didn't have growing up. That means identifying the beliefs that hold you back. You know, those labels, those beliefs, those wounds that we think about ourselves. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I'm too difficult. I'm annoying. I'm a burden. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. God, I could keep going on because I had them all. That's where I understand them all. But it's about taking those beliefs and shifting them, reparenting those beliefs and asking yourself, wait a second, what did I actually need to hear growing up? What did I actually need to hear when I messed up as a child? What did I need to hear when I got a B? Did I need to hear, that's not good enough, try harder? Or did I need to hear, that's okay, you tried really hard, we'll get it next time. How can I help you? By being able to shift those beliefs and the constant dialogue going on in our mind, we're able to reparent ourselves and heal our attachment styles. So for Claire, and actually literally all of my clients and myself, this is completely life-changing. And she remembered a moment in her childhood. So we do some digging together and we built, bring up old things that happened. She remembered a moment in her childhood when she came home from school upset and her parents told her, just stop being so sensitive. Ugh, I've been told that too. And she carried that label for her entire life. Sensitive, too much. She would even come to me and she'd start crying and she'd be like, I'm so sorry, Jen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sensitive. I know. And I'd be like, girl, this is what we're here for. Like, don't apologize for that. You're not too sensitive, sweetheart. You're perfect exactly the way that you are. Do you see how I gave her what she needed in that moment? And if we can do that for ourselves, if we don't have to rely on someone else to do it, that is the way that we can start shifting. And until then, we fill our lives with people who can, like coaches or other beautiful community members. And we lift you up and we help you see the beliefs that you actually are. So in her relationships, when she carried these labels that she was too sensitive or too much, she would always feel like she has to prove her worth to show the opposite. So she'd be like, well, if I'm too sensitive, then I can't show that I have emotion and I can't cry. And then what ends up happening? What ends up happening when we push our emotions down and down and down? Anyone know like the beach ball analogy? Shove, 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 boop. And so if you've ever been the type of person that's like, I shut down until I blow up, that can oftentimes be that anxious attachment trying to say, hey, be better. And then it blows up on us. But one day, Claire tried something new. And so we got her to do a visualization. And now she pictures that little girl. And she pictures her little self. And I love to put a hand on my heart. So that's what I told her to do. Put a hand on your heart. Ask little Claire, what did you need to hear in that moment? And she realized what she needed to hear was, hey, it's okay to feel upset. Your feelings matter. And that's what she figured out for herself. So here I am, telling her like, girl, you're so special and you're perfect the way that you are. But even though I'm telling her that, hey, it's really good, it's positive, she knows more than anyone what it is that she needed to hear. And what she needed to hear was, your feelings matter. And now when she feels herself spiraling and overthinking and worrying that she's not enough and that she's too much at the exact same time, she pauses, she takes a breath, and she reminds herself of her worth and that her feelings matter. And this is how healing begins, by noticing old patterns, by reparenting ourselves with the words and the love that we needed as a child, and by giving ourselves grace as we learn new rhythms. It doesn't come naturally at first. Trust me. You're going to drop something on the ground. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, you fucking idiot. What are you doing? Sorry, excuse my language. And then it'd be like, oh, wait, hold up. We don't talk to ourselves that anymore. No, wait, hold on. And then you start spiraling in your head and it becomes a whole big thing. But I promise you, once you get used to it, it's like lifting weights. It just becomes normal. All of a sudden you drop something and you're like, oh, sweetheart, that's okay. We'll try again next time. And that's when you've started reparenting yourself and you've started shifting the labels and the beliefs that are holding you back. The salsa of uncertainty can become that passionate, beautiful, steady, secure dance that it's meant to be if we just aren't so afraid of messing up all the time. So the salsa of uncertainty, it can feel relentless. I think it's one of the hardest attachment styles, honestly, to go through. A lot of times, I think disorganized attachment is also really rough. But at least when you're disorganized attached, you sometimes still get to avoid and shut down. But when you're anxiously attached, it feels like you're just on at all times. And so trying to keep the rhythm and trying to keep the relationship afloat and worrying if you're dancing well enough and worrying if you're the reason everything's happening, if the connection will last, if it's all your fault, it wears us down. If you're feeling exhausted and any of this is resonating with you, that's why. But remember, we don't have to stay stuck in this exhausting loop anymore. So for Claire, this realization was a turning point for her, and she began to see how these old beliefs, like being too much or not enough, they weren't hers to carry in the first place. Slowly, she started replacing them with words that she needed to hear as a child. Your feelings matter. You're lovable just as you are. And now we can do the same, because healing isn't about perfection. It's about those small, powerful moments of choosing yourself in the hard times. So become the caregiver you needed as a child. And the steps, they feel awkward at first. Trust me, it really does. But like any new dance, with practice and determination, you start to notice your rhythm changing. A rhythm that feels steady, secure, and so much more joyful and fun to do than the salsa of uncertainty. And so, as we wrap up, we're going to ask a couple questions here. Let's see. Let's do this real quick. Here are some of the questions, and they are in the journal prompts for the week. Oh, hey, Ashley, I just saw you pop up. Hey there, girl. There is the journal prompts again for anyone new that just popped in. And all these questions are on there. But think about your childhood. Let's go through this tonight, maybe even. Remember like a bad negative feeling that you had? when you were a child? And now, what's one message about love or worth that you needed to hear instead? So, what's something that stuck with you about your childhood? And you can do a reverse, or you can remember a time when your parents are very loving and kind to you. My parents messed me up in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. And I have a lot of issues with them. At the same time, I have one memory where I dropped a ketchup bottle. I think it was in the kitchen or something like that. My mom was like, "Hey, do you want to go get ice cream?" And I got so excited, I dropped the ketchup bottle and it exploded everywhere. And typically speaking, my mom would blow up at me when this happened. She was very all over the place. So in that one moment, though, she was like, "Oh, that's okay, Jenny. You were just really excited about ice cream. Let's clean it up real quick and then we'll go get ice cream." Like, she could have been that every day, then I wouldn't be here teaching you because I wouldn't have had to go through this shit in order to be here. Like, it's just like that would have been amazing. And honestly, I would take that life. I know a lot of people say, like, "Oh, it's where you are today." I was like, you know what? I'd be perfectly fine not having gone through that trauma, but I did. I'm going to take what I can out of it. I'm going to remember some of those good moments in my childhood. And I'm going to try to teach and parent myself that way now. And I'm going to teach and parent others. And I'm going to teach and parent my own kids that way because that's what we need to do. The other question is, how do you see anxious attachment showing up in your relationships today? Let me throw that one up. What's it costing you? How's it holding you back? Is it causing you to be over anxious or overthinking with your relationships? Is it causing you to be exhausted so you don't have enough time for other friendships or relationships in your life because it's all about him all the time? Is it costing you your relationship with him? Is it ending it? Is it causing it to have strife? And then lastly, what's one thing you can say to yourself now that you needed to hear back then, like we were talking about? All of these questions are really good to think about as we wrap up and finish up today. Use them in your daily practice and your meditations, whatever it is that looks like for you. But just start inquiring. Start talking to that little girl. If she has a name, if you had a nickname as a child, I like using that one. That's why I call myself Little Jenny. Don't call me Jenny now as an adult. I don't like it. I'm Jen or Jennifer, but I always say Little Jenny because that's what I was called as a little kid, Jenny. And some people have nicknames when they were a kid. You can find that. If you have a nickname for yourself as a kid and you want to share it now, go ahead. But we're going to go into the Q&A portion. And if anyone would like hot seat coaching, go ahead and either raise your virtual hand right now or put in the chat, or same thing, questions, comments, concerns, anything. Let me look in the chat and see what people are talking about.